So I'm just going to assume that you're all listeners. And so if you're familiar at all with our podcast, we like to kick things off with a movie quote. It's our way of just kind of getting things going rather than just ready, go. So in the tradition of the podcast, this is the Ghoul's Guide to Santa Barbara, and we are the weirdos, mister. Do we have anyone in the audience who knows the movie?
Any guesses? It's a 1996 classic.
We have a magic 8-ball keychain for anyone who can.
Yes, we have a winner.
Craft. Yay, winner! You have to come up here and get this. So on this week's episode, we're actually each going to tell you a story, and so I think Summers is going to introduce our first story.
Okay, so I'm introducing Liz right here. What? Okay. And so her story is called Do Seek the Traysure, Buried Treasure Under State Street Parking Garages.
Not State Street, sorry, but that's okay.
Under Santa Barbara
Yes.
parking garages?
Yes.
That was my fault. I wrote it down.
That's okay.
I am very nervous.
That's okay, too.
I'm so sorry.
So, yes, my story is about buried treasure under a city parking garage. And so this story takes place in the early 1800s with a freebooter named Hippolyte de Bouchard. Does anybody know what a freebooter is?
I was just going to ask, what's a freebooter?
Yes, it's a pirate. You get an 8-ball.
Do you want an 8-ball?
So I had never heard this term until I came across this story. And so it means a pirate or a marauder. Nice job, audience member. It comes from the Dutch words for free and booty, just FYI, because we enjoy useless trivia on this podcast. So in the early 1800s, there was not much piracy happening off the coast of California. And so this particular pirate, freebooter, Hippolyte de Bouchard, is sometimes called California's only pirate. So he was born in France, but ended up in Argentina, where he served in their navy. He eventually became an Argentinian citizen. And so in 1817, he set sail with a letter of marque that gave him permission to attack Spanish ships and settlements on behalf of Argentina. Yes.
Is that like a letter from the government?
Yeah.
That just tells you, why did you look at me like that?
I don't know. But
Yeah, okay, letter of marque.
Yeah. And if anybody's watching Our Flag Means Death, no spoilers, but this made me think of the character Jing Yi Sao this season. So that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But if you're not watching that, you should watch it.
Did he have a letter of marque?
I think that
A
might
letter
be
from
coming
Mark?
for this character. So a letter of marque.
Letter from Mark.
Yeah, so she can go pirating.
She just got
On behalf
a
of
letter
England.
in the mail from Mark. Close enough.
It's spelled differently, but that's okay.
Oh, is it? How's it spelled?
Marque.
Ah, that's good for my brain. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So de Bouchard sailed to the Philippines, then to Hawaii, which, again, is some useless trivia. If you don't already know this, Hawaii used to be called the Sandwich Islands
What?
until 1840, when it
Oh, I didn't
became
know that.
called Hawaii. Yeah.
I is that the indigenous term?
No. De Bouchard and his crew of 200 men made their way to California. The governor at the time was Pablo Vicente de Sola, and he lived in Monterey. And knowing that de Bouchard was on the way, de Sola told all of the women, children, and elderly men to take their valuables and get out of town. So they headed to the mission in Soledad to be out of harm's way,
Oh,
knowing that this pirate was on the way.
okay.
So,
Just one.
well, and his
small boat.
200 men and
In a
his
small
two
boat,
boats.
yeah, okay.
On November 24th, 1818, they attacked the Presidio in Monterey, and which they took it over in about an hour, which
no.
seems like not great.
Oh, embarrassing.
He's just one pirate, but he's highly efficient.
So they held the city for 6 days, stealing the cattle and burning the fort. And my one of my notes was like, did they take the cattle on the ship?
I was gonna ask where they put them.
But did they just I don't know, eat them while they were there
Sleep in them
the
like a
6 days?
tom-tom.
I don't know.
Hey, I mean, that was a lot of burgers.
So then they burned the fort and they headed down the coast towards Santa Barbara. Governor de Sola sent couriers from Monterey to the Santa Barbara Presidio, right over here, to warn.
He's like, the pirate is coming.
Yes, and his 200
Tell
men.
everyone.
200 men. So they came down to warn Captain Jose de la Guerra, that de Bouchard was on the way. On December...
Did they hit everything else between?
No.
No, they were
I don't
just on
think
their own?
maybe there just wasn't much between Monterey and Santa Barbara
nothing good
at
there.
that time. So
Sorry, Gilroy.
I know.
Yeah.
Outlet malls, though.
Right?
So
Not funny. Don't laugh.
that's okay. I will always laugh.
Okay, thank you.
On December 1st, 1818, Chumash lookouts on Mount Tranquillon near Lompoc saw de Bouchard's ship coming into the Santa Barbara Channel right near Honda Point. And if you're a listener and you've listened to Jen's episode about the Honda Point disaster, these ships avoided that same fate. So that's great. Well, is it?
Yay, one ship.
They swung wide.
Yes, they made it
This
around
one time.
around
Wasn't
Honda
there-
Point.
Wasn't there another Honda Point thing?
There's quite a few.
There's a
and
lot.
that's why they call it the Devil's Jaw. And also, it's the Bermuda Triangle of the
Oh,
West.
right.
That's right.
That's right. I feel like I should remember our past episodes because they weren't that long ago, and I just
You
don't.
were there when we did it.
I know.
One more little bit of useless trivia for you is that Mount Tranquillon, which is on what is now Vandenberg Air Force Base, Jen doesn't let
We
us
don't-
call it Space Force Base. She doesn't acknowledge
We don't
that.
acknowledge the Space Force.
This mountain is the highest coastal peak between Los Angeles and San Francisco.
I will remember that forever.
What's the Pete Davidson joke? That's like being the world's smartest horse or whatever. Like it's not. It's a really specific category.
It is a very specific, yes, category. Okay, so De La Guerra, just like Governor de Sola, told all of the women, children, and elderly men who weren't fit to fight to get out of town. And so also told them to either take or hide their valuables
And the cows.
and the cows and head to the Mission Santa Ynez. Told them to head to the Mission Santa Ynez in Solvang. Before de Bouchard arrived. Now we're getting to our treasure. So Doña Josefa Miranda de Cota was a widow who lived in an adobe house on Figueroa Street right near Anacapa Street. She had a 60-foot well on her property, lined with stones that had been pulled from Mission Creek. And there
You
was
can't do that now.
No, you can't do that. You don't take beautiful
Why?
boulders from the creek. Because
Why
you're
do-
going to change the flow and
No,
you know,
I mean,
have-
why did she take it?
Oh.
Is it just because they were like creaky?
You don't want to talk about the creeks in the city? Because we could do that.
We could do that for sure. No, I don't know, because they just needed stones to
Okay.
build the well. I don't know if she built it or if she bought the house with the well intact. I'm sorry, I didn't look up the
'Cause
real
we
No,
estate
that's all right. I
history.
didn't need that
We don't
level
have-
of detail.
We don't have
I'm
any
trying.
local Wellstone stores here.
Okay, so with pirates on the way, she decided to hide her valuables by dropping them in her well.
Smart. If
Yes.
you have a way to retrieve them.
That's key. So her silver candlesticks, her beautiful copperware, and her jewelry, hopefully bundled up, not just loose jewelry tossed in, it all went into the well, and she left for the Mission Santa Ynez. As de Bouchard approached Santa Barbara, he saw that the city was heavily defended, but this is the best part. De La Guerra only had a small number of men, and I don't know how many. Sorry. My research only goes so far.
If you hadn't told them that, they wouldn't have noticed.
But it's like it's interesting because he told them just keep changing your uniforms.
What?
So
Oh my gosh.
so de Bouchard on his ship with his spyglass, every time he looked through it, he saw men that he thought were different men. So, but it was just like the same guys changing clothes.
Like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah,
It's just like
or
always
like
the same
It's
time.
like Kevin McAllister defending Santa Barbara. Rocking around the Christmas tree. Or on
It
the
also
tree.
gave me like Three Amigos vibes because they
yeah.
they sewed all the
Yes.
costumes
Yes.
and they all so anyway. I just thought that was really fun.
That's awesome.
So after negotiating the trade of a couple prisoners, de Bouchard and his crew left without attacking Santa Barbara. And so December 16th, they headed down to their next target, which was the Mission San Juan Capistrano, and then they went on to Mexico. So back in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Everybody returns.
loud.
Stop looking at my notes.
I know.
Don't read ahead.
I know,
very
don't sneak ahead. So back in Santa Barbara, everybody returns safely from Solvang, but Josefa could not get anyone to climb down into her well to retrieve her treasure from under 25 feet of water in the well.
I'm not looking at it.
Okay. She eventually remarried a man named Joseph Burke, and he tried to use grappling hooks to get the treasure out of the well.
Yeah.
I was picturing her out dating and being
Just
like,
finding
"How
the right
long-
man."
How long are yours?
I have a well.
How long
You can
reach over there and get that
You
for me.
can win my hand in marriage by retrieving this treasure from my well.
Yeah.
So they had a daughter, Magdalena. She married Thomas More, and he tried to retrieve the treasure, but he was also unsuccessful. He passed in 1881, and sometime after that, the well caved in and
the
was
well.
abandoned.
Oh.
No, as far as I know, no.
Oh.
So Thomas and Magdalena had a daughter named Anna Josephine Burke, who married Hiram Pierce. And their son, Charles Pierce, was born in 1888. And in July 1969, Pierce recorded an interview with the local writer Walter Tompkins. And in that interview, he talks about his great-grandmother's treasure. He said that when he was a kid, the old Burke Adobe, as it was called at that time, on Figueroa Street, became a Chinese laundry. And there were stables out in the back. And when the staff cleaned out the stables, just all of the manure and hay and whatever they swept up out of the stables, they just dumped it into the well for like years. So finally, what was left of the well is just covered in manure until it was, completely full.
I don't like candlesticks that much.
So for like his entire adult life, this Charles Pierce was trying to come up with a way to retrieve the treasure. But in 1969, when he recorded this interview, the city was preparing to build the parking garage that's next to the library now.
Okay.
So in this interview, he talked about trying to get like a septic tank contractor to come and dig out the well. He was trying to get like historians at UCSB to get interested and get involved and like retrieve this. But they couldn't rally anybody. But one story said that a foundation pier for the garage was sunk right next to the well, even supposedly unearthing some of those stones from the creek that lined the well.
Okay.
So,
Distinctive stones. Okay, I'm with it now for that.
You can
I'm
tell
all
that
for
they're...
the creek stones now.
Okay. Thanks.
If you needed me on board.
I like it.
No, we're not on board from taking.
No,
we
not
don't
anymore.
want anyone taking creek stones.
So Pierce never got anybody to attempt to retrieve the treasure, and he passed in 1984. And as we know, that parking garage is still there.
Wait, remind me because I don't pay attention. Which parking garage?
by the library.
Oh,
Yeah,
that one.
and
Okay.
so maybe with Josefa Dakota's treasure buried 60 feet below, right near the Faulkner Gallery. So I wish I could tell you that Josefa's ghost haunts that parking garage, still
Tell us
looking for
that.
her treasure.
Just make it up.
Okay,
It's
it is
fine.
so.
Okay.
That parking garage is haunted
Okay.
by the ghost of Josefa Dakota trying to find her treasure.
It's like, do you have long arms?
Even if it's not true, I'm just like, every time I go in that parking garage now, I'm going to think about like this ghost, especially at night. But anyway, that's my story for tonight.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
I had no idea about any of that. Yay.
Yeah, it was a fun one to
Megan,
look into.
Can we dig up that parking garage and take a look, please?
Okay, so Megan said City Lot 7. So near the library.
So
yeah.
next time you go to the library, if you have really long arms, you can try to retrieve the treasure.
Probably unlikely.
There's am I allowed to say this? There's like a secret room in the middle of the, nope, not allowed to say that. It's a secret room.
Maintenance office.
Not a maintenance office.
It's a ghost room.
It's haunted, 100%. Okay, so next this evening, Jen is going to tell us her story that we are calling A Streetcar Named EXPIRE. Take it away, Jen.
So, how many big streetcar fans do we have here tonight?
Am I allowed to participate?
Oh,
I like a streetcar.
Okay, cool. Nice. In 1875, the Santa Barbara Street Railway mule car system began as a single line of narrow gauge tracks running from Stearns Wharf. Which
Mule?
Mule,
car?
yeah.
Yes.
What's a mule? Is it?
It's the mule pulling the
No, I
streetcar
know,
on a
but
track.
is a mule like a cross between a horse and a...
A horse and a donkey.
Oh, right. Okay.
I believe.
Gotcha.
Yes, so these were streetcars pulled by mules on narrow gauge tracks. There was one single line at the beginning of the time of the streetcars.
The land before
1875.
time.
Yes. So Stearns Wharf was completed in 1872, and the first Santa Barbara streetcar line ran from Stearns Wharf up State Street to the Arlington Hotel, which took up 5 blocks
What?
Wow.
on State
Yeah.
Street.
Are
It
you
was
kidding?
massive.
Like the
So
same
it's
size
between-
as these blocks?
Yeah, so between Sola and Victoria Streets. It was Santa Barbara's first luxury hotel. Boasted 3 stories, was set back from the street with manicured gardens, and a 6-story observation tower
What?
that you could
Yeah.
see the whole
You'll have to
city
share,
from.
share
I
photos.
just told someone it was in the same place as the Arlington Theater, and that was clearly a lie.
It was
Like-
near. It was near
Okay.
the Arlington
Okay.
Theater, and then eventually the same family, I believe, or the same company built the Arlington Theater. The Arlington Hotel did not want to exist. It burned down at one point, and then they
earthquake.
fixed it, and then the earthquake in 1925 took it down, and it didn't want to be there.
It's doing good now.
Yeah. And it was, like I said, Santa Barbara's first luxury hotel. So they helped fund the railway, and that was like the kind of the
Oh, really?
the big
Okay.
the big thing up there. So railway system came down here. Accidents were very rare during this time because they went quite slow because the mules.
Okay.
In 1883, the brakes failed on one of the mule cars, and the car jumped the tracks near State and Figueroa. But they were going so slow that passengers just topped off,
Oh,
and then it left the tracks and ended up hitting an awning near Canon Perdido.
very slowly. What happened to
Very
the mule?
slowly, just kind of
no.
rolled off. Nobody was injured in that one.
Not even the mule?
The mule was fine.
You're really concerned about the mule?
Yeah.
I am. I don't care
Oh,
about the
now
mule.
so when electric streetcars took over and they expanded the mule-drawn line, they eventually retired all the mules, and there was a parade to introduce the new electric streetcars, and like the pride mule of the mule system got to ride on a flat
No,
car.
I
I
love
didn't
that.
know what was happening.
and he was like,
was scared.
he was paraded.
They were super
terrible.
excited.
You paraded to the slaughterhouse.
I know.
No, they went to a farm. It was like a ranch for
okay.
mules. And they're all still there, living happily. That's what happens to all the animals.
That was excellent banter.
So the new Citizens Railway ran until 1929, when automobiles became more commonplace and people didn't want railways anymore. But the expansion that happened with the electric streetcars created extensions northwest and northeast of the Arlington Hotel, and then west along the harbor.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't even know what direction that is. I'm so, in this town, and then like also. All right, thank you. Thank you, audience member with good direction.
Where's your compass? Ask the Magic 8 Ball which direction it
You're
is.
supposed to say yes and.
So in 1890, here's a quick thing that I didn't actually completely research, but it sounded interesting. But a Consolidated Electric Company, who I'm going to tell you a little more about, apparently eventually built the first Los Baños del Mar bathhouse, and it was like the hot place to hang out in the city. They had a second story band shell, similar to the band shell that is now being refurbished, I guess, by the city.
Polished up.
But also was like a hot thing back on Sundays. They had performances there, but there was a bowling alley in the original bathhouse.
Oh, what? Why didn't they bring
They had
this
a
back?
pleasure pier
Yeah.
that
What's
had
that?
like rides and
Like Santa Monica Pier?
yeah. It looked really
Sounded
fancy.
more salacious.
And so the company that managed the electric rail car system funded that because I guess they
Oh, really?
wanted more people to ride their rail cars to get there.
Oh, cool.
So, but in 1896, Consolidated Electric Company was given permission to erect the electric lines to convert all the mule cars. But the current mule line owners were not going out that easy. They decided to bid for the electric lines also, and
What
the
did
city.
they erect?
I'm just going to say it
Okay.
a lot. So the city council awarded them the right to, I have string, but I'm going to say erect lines as well.
Sorry, we have the humor of 12-year-old boys.
And a battle broke out along the highly coveted State Street, with workers trying to lay their own lines by day and dig out each other's lines at night.
That's
say
amazing.
lay-
going.
Do you want me to talk more about laying the lines or
Keep going.
erecting
So
the
why did the workers care,
poles?
though? I never understand that. Like, why did they? What?
I think they were just really invested in
They're just into it. Not doing anything else.
I mean, look at how excited these people are about streetcars.
They're not that excited. I'm kidding.
They promised at the beginning
I'm
that they were
excited.
really into streetcars. So anyways, eventually the Consolidated bought out the mule lines, and the conversion to electric streetcars was completed. So that kind of put an end to the drama. They said, how about we just pay you and we'll take over? And they were like, great, we'll take our mules and go home. So the Santa Barbara Street Railway extended again all the way up to the Mission this time, and eventually all the way up to Cottage Hospital. The electric streetcars traveled faster than the mules. I don't know why I felt like I needed to say that. It seems pretty obvious. And because of
I
this,
enjoyed it. I enjoyed
accidents were more frequent. However, there was only ever one streetcar fatality recorded in Santa Barbara, and it happened on Easter Sunday, April 10th, 1904.
Oh, yeah? Ooh. You going to tell us about it?
No, I'm done.
I don't know.
Great story.
Pausing for a while.
If you would like to know more about it, with the expanding railway system bringing more tourists and profits, there was continued pressure for growth of the railway system. And with their eyes on opening a new line connecting Santa Barbara and Carpinteria, 2 new larger cars had been recently purchased, and their standard gauge fittings were retrofitted to work on the narrow gauge tracks. One of those was car number 16. It had been recently added to the route that took passengers to and from the Mission. So you can imagine Easter Sunday is a pretty high traffic day at the Mission.
Yeah.
And just as service ended, car number 16 rolled up. Now, these 2 new cars were larger and therefore designed to hold about 48 passengers. However, over 120 churchgoers crowded on board that morning, anxious to get home to hide their eggs. So these are
open-sided
streetcars. So you
just
think
hanging off the
like,
sides.
you know, trolleys in San Francisco where you can just hang on to the sides. I believe they were at least open in some places, but there was also a ton of people crowded inside.
Wow.
So, as number 16 started down Laguna Hill, because of all the extra weight, it was unable to make its first stop and started picking up speed as it headed toward the turn onto Mission Street.
Yikes.
This is amazing.
The driver of the streetcar, Victor Kelton, and his conductor used both their sets of brakes to try and get a handle on the extra weight and the speed of the car, and passengers clung to each other as they barely made that first turn. As they headed towards the sharp turn at Mission and Garden, Mr. Kelton threw it in reverse, hoping to slow it even further. The passengers on the outside of the car leapt from the moving vehicle, breaking bones and scraping along the street.
Oh my God.
Then the number 16 car jumped the tracks at Garden, tipping to its side and sliding down the street, shooting sparks into the air until it crashed into an electric pole. Residents came rushing from their homes, using anything they could find to try and cut through the metal to rescue the passengers. 4 people had been crushed to death underneath the streetcar, and another died later at the hospital from their injuries. Shockingly, only 30 other passengers were hurt, with only 17 sustaining serious injuries.
Wait, didn't you say there's only one recorded fatality?
Before this, or like?
Oh, before this.
Or
Got
with
it.
the
No, you don't have
mules.
to scroll back. That's okay.
Yes, she
I'm gonna
does.
scroll up.
She's been sassing me the whole time. Give her work.
Let me see. What did I
Maybe
say?
you said before this.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I said only
Or maybe it was one fatal
crash.
event. Maybe that was it. Okay,
There
sorry.
was
Oh, okay.
ever one streetcar fatality.
Oh, we just misunderstood that.
See, I
We
was
thought it
just
meant
expecting one person to die. Yeah.
Okay,
Not-
But it was the whole
there was
car.
only ever one event that caused four
No, it's fine.
5 fatalities.
It's
yes.
okay.
Okay. So, anyways,
Just clarifying.
so it was later determined that a broken casing had caused the front brakes to fail.
What is that?
Has
Sausage casing?
something?
Is it
Yes,
like-
it's definitely a sausage casing.
Would it be like wire casing?
Probably.
The sass.
And but because of this crash, so it wasn't actually. It was related to the extra people and the extra weight.
Yeah, okay.
But it was a failure of the brake part that caused the actual crash.
Okay.
So because of this, the larger cars were no longer used on that steep Mission route. Car number 16 was repaired and renamed car number 19.
No.
Oh my
So
gosh.
people
Back
wouldn't be
in
scared
service.
to ride
Oh
the
my
killer
God.
car. And I put here, but no matter what number they gave it, it will always be a streetcar named Expire.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that was so good.
Oh.
I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah.
No, me neither.
Yeah, nice
Thank
job. There's a streetcar like the last streetcar stop up by Orpit Park, I think, up on
No, really?
the Riviera, but it's like super boring. There's none of this stuff. There's no like sparks and death and sliding.
I'm sorry. Maybe
I
we
know.
can add that in.
Again, The sass.
I do miss the little trolleys that used to go along
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. No
Me too.
mules,
No.
though. So the mule lines went in 1875, did you say? You don't
The
have to.
mule 1875 was the mule car system began.
Okay. And then the action movie fatality thing was like 1904, wasn't it?
1904.
Okay.
Let me scroll down.
Just in case I get tested on it later.
Yeah,
I
there will
don't
be
know.
a quiz
No
later,
reason.
so
No reason.
take notes. So that's my story.
Nice.
And now we're going to pass it over to Summers, and she is going to tell us about the pointless and awful State Street murder of Theodore Glancey by the annoying jerk Clarence Gray.
I am. And that my subtitle is, or when Santa Barbara was basically the Wild West, especially if you were the editor of a newspaper. Today I'm going to tell you about a State Street murder and give you some points about how being a reporter has always been pretty badass, but it was especially impressive and dangerous in the earliest days of the city of Santa Barbara's history. One of Santa Barbara's first newspapers, okay, this is annoying to have to remember, but you remember the News Press, and that was made of two papers, the News and the Press.
Okay.
And so the original newspaper in Santa Barbara was called the Post, and then that became the Press, and that's the one we're going to talk about today. And that is going to be confusing because you might think I'm like just talking about the media, but it's
the
the
press.
name of a paper,
Got
the
it.
Santa
Okay.
Barbara
So
Press.
the Capitol Press.
Yes.
Okay.
The Press.
Got it.
Yeah, okay. So the Press was specifically a Republican newspaper, which I don't think meant the same thing as now, but so don't freak out. But so from that we know that Republican candidates for office in Santa Barbara would have expected the support of their paper, and that will be important later. Okay, so in case you're thinking life as a newspaper man nearly 150 years ago was like anything like being a journalist now, not that we really know what being a journalist is like, but so like let me just stop you because it's not like that. Running a newspaper back then was super dangerous, and you had to put your money where your mouth was with your opinions a lot, and like I would hate to have to do that. It sounds terrifying to have to defend your opinions when you're in a town full of angry gunslingers, which that's what Santa Barbara was like. So State Street was at this time, this is like 1880s and 1870s. And
So pre-mule cars.
I said 70s, and then my brain just filled with like disco on stage, and like I had to stop. And, yeah, it was good.
Gunslinger
It was a
disco?
good picture. It was such a good picture. So it was all dirt, right? And then on the sidewalks, it was 12 feet of just like wood planks.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
at
read
that
a little
time.
bit about that.
And your Arlington hotel, that's the reason that State Street got, I should move my mic when I move my head.
Yes.
Thanks. That's why State Street got paved, because the people in the hotel wanted to be able to just go to the ocean.
Oh, okay.
It's really far, though. I wouldn't like that as a
To
hotel.
like
but-
walk, you mean?
yeah. Or take a mule car. I don't know. Actually, yeah, a mule car by the time it was paved. Anyway, but at the time we're talking about, it was dirt, dusty road. Like, seriously, gunslingery.
Can I do a quick aside? So
Yeah.
when they paved the roads, they paved directly over the old lines.
Oh, yeah?
And so now when they repair some of the streets, even still, if they dig down far enough, they'll unearth
They'll
some
see
of
the
the
lines.
original
Oh,
lines.
cool.
Yeah.
The mules from the parade are down there. That's an interesting fact. Okay, where was I? So dirt road, town full of angry gunslingers on a dirt road. I guess I felt like that was important to tell you that the gunslingers. And it turns out that was what Santa Barbara was at the time. Like, here's an example of what could happen and did happen here. In the 1870s, one of the editors of the Santa Barbara Press at that time, okay, there was only one, but like I'm talking about two of them today, so that's why I said one. So the editor at the time of the Santa Barbara Press printed something disparaging about Santa Barbara's district attorney at the time, W.T. Wilson, and the district attorney horsewhipped him down State Street and basically left him to die.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't die, but he was quote unquote insensible for a bit. And then he was like, oh, I am done being this newspaper editor.
Yeah.
So I think it was better in other places. Santa Barbara was just like particularly rough for
I've
newspaper
heard that
editors.
during that time, Santa Barbara was well known as like being the like super dangerous town.
Opinions and violence.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So it seems smart of him that he got out of town. And I'm going to skip back a little bit for your reference. if you're like me and you didn't know exactly what horsewhipping is, it's when you get a whip that you'd use on a horse, and then you just sort of like whip a person that you're mad at while you chase them down the street. And it was a thing.
That sounds terrible.
I know, it sounds terrible, but also, like, it would be kind of fun to bring it back if we were, like, like if it was pretend and it was just like a,
No, this sounds like a bad idea all around.
I knew that you would not support me in this.
I'm so sorry.
I don't support this entry in the next Fiesta parade.
I was actually thinking Fiesta because it's sort of a similar situation of, like, the St. Barbara.
I still feel like we need to do a more accurate portrayal of St. Barbara, but...
With horsewhips. She could horsewhip people. Come on. The last El Presidente has to be horsewhip. I'm going to stop.
I don't think horsewhipping and beheadings are quite the vibe.
There's someone in a building around here, like, someone is insulting Fiesta. Get her. Anyway, it seems like horsewhipping was like a super popular thing on State Street, and specifically State Street. And that, I mean, I don't know. And then this is where I wrote about how I thought it would be a good idea to bring it back, but I'm not going into it now.
I'm sorry.
I feel unsupported. So let's get back to the tragic hero of our story, because it has a tragic hero. So there was a new man on the scene in Santa Barbara. Since, remember, the horsewhipped editor had skipped town
and was insensible.
Imagine they get to the part of the interview. Do you have any questions for us? Yeah, why did the last guy leave?
Yes. Oh my God.
Just awkward silence.
Not a good
No
fit.
reason. He just retired.
That's why I left my last job. Okay. Then not a good fit, not the horsewhipping. Okay. So the Santa Barbara Press's brand new editor, Theodore Glancey, absorb that name because he's a great dude. The Santa Barbara Press had just been sold by W.W. Hollister, famed person we name streets after, and the new owner was John P. Stearns, famed person we name wharves after. And Stearns found Theodore M. Glancey, his new editor, and brought him to Santa Barbara. Glancey was born in Illinois. He enlisted. Do you ever notice your mouth noises when you're doing this?
Yes.
Like, okay, sorry. That's terrible. Glancey was born in Illinois, and he enlisted in the Union Army when the Civil War started in 1861. And he was described as a man of nerve and true to his convictions. He was a man of liberal education with legal training and just views of matters in general. He was polite and urbane in manner. And if anyone knows what urbane means, you can have a magic 8-ball. Want to tell me?
Any takers?
Any takers? Nope.
Urbane? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, I have no idea. I just know
Courteous
there's
and
like...
refined in manner, typically used of a man. What? I just copied and pasted that. That's terrible.
Congrats.
Well, I mean,
So ladies
man,
can't be
woman.
urbane?
I guess not.
Rude.
Nobody knows what it means, so it's okay. Congratulations. Thanks for participating. So Glancey came to California from Illinois in 1873, and he started out in Los Angeles, where he was editor of the Los Angeles Herald. And in 1880, or fateful year, he moved to Santa Barbara to take over the press. He had a wife and children, but they weren't with him in Santa Barbara or California, as far as I can tell, and I'm not sure why. But they were like a loving family, and he was missing them. They just hadn't made it here yet. I don't know. Consider Glancey like our white hat cowboy hero in our real life State Street Western movie. Upstanding Civil War veteran, committed family man, missing his loved ones. I just said one. And a principled newspaper editor. And, okay, cool thing. And unexpectedly, there's one more thing about him that's like maybe not relevant, but I want to talk about it anyway. So Glancey was also a spiritualist.
Yes.
Which is, nobody else is excited about that
I
except
am.
us, but we are
I'm excited.
really excited about it. So it's exciting to us on the podcast because we covered spiritualism in episode 2, Summerland and the Big Yellow House. Liz, so you said in that episode, Summerland hadn't been founded in 1880. It was like 1883,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I think so.
And so it's a little bit of a tangent, but
We like this.
yeah, thanks. Thank you. I do feel supported again. But I thought it was interesting that we've got Glancey living in this area as a spiritualist before Summerland was founded.
Yeah.
Because I kind of always thought spiritualism was like kind of a niche thing and just like maybe some famous people, and then we know about it because we live right by a place that used to like be founded as it.
Yeah.
But that's not it. Like spiritualism was a huge deal around this time. To review, spiritualism is a religion where you believe people have souls or spirits, like ghosts, and those persist after death, and you can contact them and talk to them. So seances are like a spiritualist invention. Yeah, I just always thought it was a smaller group. that we only knew about, you know, because of like.
I can't remember the percentage that we talked about.
I have it for you.
Okay.
I feel like I have concerns about the editor of the newspaper
Being
thinking
a
that he can
spiritualist.
talk to ghosts.
It's no different than any other religion, though. Like, right? Controversial opinion. Alienating all of
I want
the
to be
guests.
smited
Sorry, go on.
Smoke.
in the middle of town.
It's just horsewhip chin down the street.
See, it would be good. I really think it would be a good festival.
I'm still not on board.
Okay. All right. It would still be better than Fiesta.
I don't have confidence.
That's a popular
that my
joke. I'm happy
record-
about that. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Jen. I talked right over
No,
you.
I
That
was just
the-
gonna say I don't feel confident enough in my life choices that horsewhipping could be on the table as a form of punishment in my life.
But see, I'm thinking it wouldn't be a real horsewhip. It would like maybe just be made of like terry cloth or something,
Like
and then
the little ribbon
First, gonna do
dancer thing.
horsewhipping
Yeah.
cosplay,
yeah,
LARPing.
yeah, totally, yeah, foam. Yes, like the Ivy Foot Patrol in our last
Oh no.
Halloween episode. Wooden swords. A little in joke for us only. Okay, so spiritualism was really big between the 1840s and the 1920s. And I wish I could have found you statistics on how many people were spiritualists in 1880 when we're talking about it. But I can tell you that 17 years later, in 1897, around 8 million Americans were spiritualists. And that is more than 10% of the population of the
yeah.
United States. And, like, that's a lot, right?
a lot.
Yeah.
Super a lot. And, like, for context, the Church of Latter-day Saints is, like, 1.8% or something. So, like, if you
Oh.
think about, like, how many...
Like the percentage
Yeah.
of the population. That's wild.
Since we released episode 2 a couple months ago, I went to the Winchester Mystery House, and the tour I went on was like all spiritualism all the time content, because the owner and architect of the house, Mary Winchester, was very into contacting the dead because her husband and children were dead. And that is important because spiritualism was big in the post-Civil War era because so many families had lost sons and fathers, and they wanted to be able to talk to them. And then the other thing, which I thought was so interesting and kind of logical, like go with me on this, the telephone had just been invented. And so it was so foreign to people to be able to talk to someone that they couldn't see, like across the country, right? And so it's really only a tiny little, you're pretending that I haven't told you this 3 times already.
That's okay.
It's just a little step between like someone across the country that you can't see to like speak to the dead.
Yeah.
I think, I mean.
Yeah,
I
well,
think-
and like when you told me that, I just imagine like you're hearing like the little whispers of other
Oh, yeah,
conversations happening over the line. Like, I don't know. That's just the way I imagine
yeah.
phone calls at that time. So like, you're like, oh, was that a ghost?
I think that was the concept, that it was just like a very similar thing, and it was so different
Yeah.
to be able to talk to people that anything seemed possible. Okay, let's do another one. Does anyone know what the original phone greeting was going to be?
Ahoy, hoy.
You can't play.
You get a magic 8 ball.
Ahoy, hoy, yeah. You already won one. You're the star pupil. You can learn more about spiritualism in episode 2, as I've said 5 times, and that's the end of the connection to spiritualism, sort of, in this story. I just really wanted to talk about it because I think it's cool. I do think it's interesting also, just context, that our editor did believe in spiritualism, and not because it's particularly weirder than any other religion, but he had those beliefs. And another thing that was really helpful was because there were so many spiritualists and they were kind of like all friends. There was another spiritualist person, Caroline Wells Healy Dow. So a lot of times when we like quotes from women in history, they're like Mrs. George.
Mrs. So-and-so, yeah.
Yeah, they're just the husband's name.
I was really pleased at first that we had a whole name, and then I was like, but there's 4 and that's annoying. Like, whatever. I don't know. But it's a better thing than just like Mrs. Jones, or especially when it's like a husband's first name. That's so
exactly.
irritating. Like, all right. Caroline Wells Healy Dow wrote and published a book called My First Holiday, or Letters from Home from Colorado, Utah, and California. And it was basically just her diaries. And she was like, I'll publish this as a book. And it's so dry. But because she had a connection to Santa Barbara and she was a spiritualist, she had a special interest in the events that I'm about to tell you about. And she wrote a lot about it in her book. And her book is still available. It's on Google Books even. But yeah, oh my gosh, it's so dry. And we'll put a link to it, but maybe don't bother on our website. And our website is Ghoul's Guide to SB.com. Yes. You thought I was going to mess it up.
No.
And And if you don't all subscribe to our podcast, would you please do it right now? Because it really helps us, and we're doing it all, in our free time, and we love it so much. So back to the dusty Wild West looking State Street of 1880. So we've had our white hat hero, but our black hat bad guy had been kicking around in Santa Barbara since 1870, pre-mule.
Tell us his name again.
I'm getting to it.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's right now. I didn't need to sass you at all. And it's like, he's so interesting as a person, but I also really hated him when I started reading about him. His name is Clarence Gray. He was the worst person, but it might have been a fake name, but he was known around town as Clarence Gray. So we'll stick with that.
Okay.
So he's from back east and like sort of Pennsylvania. And so it wasn't long before, like after he arrived in Santa Barbara, that he started to raise hell and violently irritate the populace. So you looked at me like I was doing something wrong.
No, you keep looking at me like me looking at you is annoying.
Please interrupt me and make a joke.
I'm just watching Liz's hair sparkle in the lights.
Yeah, that's nice. So I don't know exactly what he did to immediately anger the clergy in town, but Clarence Gray did something, and one of the Catholic priests here told him off for it. And I would think that
Are
even
they
if
allowed to do that? Or was
Yeah,
it like a
they
very,
can speak words.
was it very polite? He like quoted a very saucy psalm at him.
No, they were allowed to tell you that you were sinning. I mean, that's their whole job, right?
Again, I'm trying not to get smoke out here.
This was all right. So I would think, and I don't know, but at the time, like, if you didn't care about the opinion of a priest, you'd probably just be like, okay, priest, and then like not be near the priest. But no, Clarence Gray beat the priest until he was unconscious and then left him for dead.
What?
I'm
just
pretty
did not
sure
see
you're
that
not
coming.
supposed to do that.
Sorry. That surprised me.
So part of my favorite thing about this podcast is making you laugh and be shocked with me. Oh, yay, I win. So the punishment for doing the priest beating and leaving for dead was $20 fine. No. It's a $20 fine. Yeah.
That's like a
Yeah,
like pay to play. Just like, oh, $20 I can beat someone up. Pay to play. Okay.
So $20, $450 in today's money. So it's like,
That's
I mean,
not that
it's just like a parking ticket. Well, it was a little, right? Not a parking ticket. Sorry. A speeding ticket.
There you go. Yeah.
We'll edit that out.
No.
It's just like a speeding ticket plus a little. After Clarence Gray was charged with assaulting the priest, the press newspaper, remember them, wrote about it, and the article noted that Gray was just a jerk, and if he got mad, he'd pull a gun on you, and they were like, just, he's awful, and like, this guy is, ugh. He
so
was just
obviously
the worst.
he was a cowboy with a mustache.
No, he was really clean cut. He was nice. Nice looking, I guess. Like Laura's husband in Little House. So no, nobody got that one. Okay, so the article came out, and then the next day, the offices of the press went up in flames.
Wow.
And like almost completely burned down, but didn't burn down. And so I just think that's such a bold move on his part. Yeah. I have a really hard time with it. Okay, if somebody tells you something and they expect you to believe it, but it's an unbelievable thing that like no person would ever believe, it really messes with my worldview and makes me incredibly angry and upset. And so I was really mad at this guy for doing that because like he just pretended he didn't do it. And he's like, just the day after that article that came out about me shooting people up all the time.
Just denial.
So the rest of Santa Barbara was mad about it too, though. And they were like, well, of course he did that. And we're just going to be mean to him until he leaves. Because
so they were more mad that he burned the press building down and then he beat up a priest?
Oh, for sure. Okay. Because no, that's a good question. But at the time, the people of Santa Barbara were pretty proud of their local newspaper at the time. So our old-timey Santa Barbarans made it pretty clear Gray wasn't welcome in town, so he left town, which would have been such a nice place to end this story. Although I'm less nervous now, so I'm doing better. Thanks for sticking with me.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a few years later, Clarence Gray, annoying jerk, comes back to Santa Barbara, and he decides this time to run for district attorney. So remember before the district attorney did some horsewhipping?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So district attorney was, I guess, just for thugs. I don't know.
Well, yeah, did you have to be a lawyer? Were there any qualifications? You're just like, I'll be the DA now.
I don't know. I didn't look that up either. I'm
just curious.
Maybe he left town and went and got a degree in
There you go.
But I mean, it wasn't even his own name, so maybe he just
that's true.
was at home writing one
Yeah. Hey guys, look at this degree I found.
like a note from your mom.
There's someone else's name just crossed off and he wrote his over it.
He decides to run for district attorney as a Republican. which if you remember earlier is important because the Santa Barbara Press was a Republican paper. So a Republican candidate for local office is going to expect the support. So it's just like, yeah.
I mean, unless you burn down their building.
That's true.
Oh,
Key
true.
point.
Mm-hmm. But he said he didn't do it, so he's just going to get mad. It was logical for him to expect the support of the newspaper's editorial staff. So in Walker A. Tompkins's book, It Happened in Old Santa Barbara, there's a bit about how there was a hoodlum element in Santa Barbara at the time, which I would love to know more about, and I'd love to tell you more about, but I have gone off on one tangent already, and we only have a half an hour left. I'll have to try to find a way to talk about it in a future episode.
Okay.
I just think it was so interesting. But the idea was there were so many criminals in Santa Barbara, like you said, in 1880, that they could and would vote together and swing a whole local election. So they were in charge.
So the hoodlums were a whole political party?
Yeah. It was like a loose association. I don't know, like pirates or something. It was, it wasn't a party. They would just like get together and be like, let's do this. And, and they'd do it. Yeah, they could swing a local election just with their votes. So Clarence Gray was gonna win district attorney. Like he was gonna win that because he had the vote of the hoodlum contingent.
Even without the endorsement from the paper.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It did not matter. But he still wanted it because he's a jerk. And so our upstanding newspaper editor, Theodore Glancey, was really mad. He was like, he shouldn't have been nominated even. This is not a thing that should have happened. Mm-hmm. And Glancey felt the same way about Clarence Gray as I do, and I hope all of you do. And he just could not stand him, and he had no patience for him, and he was also like outraged that his new hometown was going to be influenced by this man, and like damaged by his ascendance into like a really high level position. So being the newspaper editor, Theodore Glancey he just trash talked Gray in an editorial, and like something happened. So the state of California just decided like Santa Barbara doesn't need a DA election, so don't worry about it.
What?
But I know it was weird. But like for that year. So, but even so, Theodore Glancey was just like no, and he went off on Gray in the Santa Barbara Press. And Glancey's editorial called Gray a criminal, a hoodlum. Hoodlum? I cannot. Is it hoodlum or hoodlum? Okay. And said Gray's nomination was a disgrace in the first place. Just that it had even happened. Yeah. And then he said Clarence Gray wasn't even named Clarence Gray. Like, she doesn't even go here. Yeah. And then Glancey said that the man everyone knew as Clarence Gray was really an outlaw from Pennsylvania, whose real name was Patrick McGinnis. But so this was really brave of our newspaper editor, Glancey, right? Like, he knew, like, newspapermen in Santa Barbara and the clergy and pretty much everyone were at risk all the time here because it was the Wild West. Yeah. Being horsewhipped, as I said, was kind of normal. And we've heard about 2 people being beaten up and left for dead so far. And so Glancey wasn't just anonymously and safely, like, making a sassy political tweet. He knew there was going to be, like, a consequence. And he pretty clearly knew that the person he was taking on was a dangerous and unhinged and deeply irritating and volatile man. But Glancey published his views anyway in a paper that was expected to support Republican candidates, and I just found that very impressive, and he's my hero right now. So the day the press published Glancey's editorial, Clarence Gray freaked out about it, and I bet that was pretty epic to watch. And he went to talk to John P. Stearns, who, remember, owned the newspaper. Right. Gray tried to intimidate Stearns, but Stearns was like, okay, I wrote it. Because he was in there asking, like, who wrote it? And he was like, it was me. You're the worst. And so Gray couldn't handle that. I guess Stearns was like a wealthy person and, I don't know, more intimidating. So he's like, oh, okay, and left. And didn't pursue it further. But he knew that editorials are written by editors. So, like, he knew that Stearns didn't do it. And he was upset about all the stuff that had been written about him being the worst and also secretly an outlaw living under an assumed name. So the next evening, and this is where we're on State Street now. Not here, but in the story, we're on State Street, a little ways down.
We're here too.
Clarence Gray went out looking for Theodore Glancey, and he found him. So this is where the showdown happens.
Wait, so they didn't make a plan to meet at high noon?
No.
Darn.
I don't know what time it happened, though, and now I feel inadequately prepared.
Let's just pretend it was high noon.
What is high noon? Is it like different than noon? So this happened 2 blocks that way on the corner of State and Coda. Please say that's 2 blocks that way. I looked on a map.
I think so, yeah.
I think it is. In front of a very fancy looking establishment that was there at the time called the Occidental Hotel. So Gray went up to Glancey outside the Occidental, and we'll put some pictures on our website too. This is according to Tompkins again, and it sounds pretty stilted, but Gray went up to Glancey. I don't know if people talk this way, but Gray says, "Did you write the article that assailed my good name?" And Glancey's like, "Yes, you are the worst." And he just does not care about Gray at all, and he doesn't think he's deserving of his attention in any way. And he knows that he like pulls guns on people when he's upset
and beats up priests.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I just enjoyed it so much that he was just like, whatever. And so he walks away from Gray, but as was Gray's way, he got his gun out. And he pointed it at Glancey. Glancey, a badass, grabs him and wrestles him to the ground. He pins him to the 12-foot wooden sidewalk, which is why it was important, on the side of State Street. And then he sasses him, and he goes, "You shall not draw a revolver on me. You see I'm not armed." So he's calling him a coward and like a dishonorable person and whatever. I don't think that's how they talked, but
Maybe.
I don't know. I guess it could be. Just offended people are better spoken than I am. So calling Gray's honor into it and like calling him unsporting, and it's just fantastic shade, and I loved it. So Gray is incredibly mad. He's so mad because it's like getting to the core of him. He's so insecure and terrible. And Glancey gets up again and he walks away again. And a bystander on State Street was just like, "Oh, I will wrestle the other man with the gun to the ground. I'll take care of it. You keep going." And that's when Gray gets free and he shoots Theodore Glancey.
Oh no.
And the bullet went through Glancey's hand and through his hip and out the other side. And I'm not going to talk about it more because it's awful. But he doesn't die right away there. And he veers away from the Occidental Hotel and he keeps walking.
So he shot him as he was walking away?
Yeah. I know. Not in the back, though, in the hip. I mean, it's at least sideways. So he's walking while mortally wounded, and he makes it a whole block. Again, very badass, but so sad. He makes it to the corner of Haley and State, and there's another hotel there that's called the Morris House. And I have no idea why he went to that one instead of just going into the one he was next to, but, like, I don't know, maybe he knew somebody there. So he staggers inside, and the hotel staff do their best to take care of him in the lobby, and then they send for 2 local doctors, Dr. Bates and Dr. Winchester, which sound like Sam and Dean from Supernatural. And they're good, solid names. And the doctors work together and examine our wounded hero, and they just know he can't survive it. Like, the bullet just tore through him. And so they just tell him, like, "We can't save you, and this is hopeless, and you're going to die." And so the 2 doctors later said that what Glancey said back to them when they let him know he was going to die was, "I die for a principle and would not go back on it if I could." Again, don't think that's a direct quote. But then there's a sadder, but also slightly, like, weird, and I would like people's opinions on this quote attributed to Glancey as he died, which is, "I am dying without seeing my dear little wife girl." And I mean, it's probably a figure of speech, but it just gave me the ick a little bit. I don't know, right? So Glancey stayed inside the Morris House Hotel down on Haley and suffering unconscious, and then he died a few hours later. And I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah.
So the doctor showed up, but they never, like, took him to the hospital or anything?
No, they just couldn't help him. They were just like, "He's done for."
And I think at the time there wasn't a hospital. I think it was like cottage hospital, which meant like
it was a cottage.
Loosely trained, like loosely trained nurses and
Do you know what happened to the bad guy?
I do. You want to know?
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell you because he's such a jerk.
It's not
but
good.
No,
I'm
going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. So as much as I hate the other guy, let's get back to stupid Clarence Gray, who, by the way, after he fatally shot Theodore Glancey, like just through the hip, and he's walking down the street still to get to Haley, he didn't give up and just let him die in peace. He followed him and tried to shoot him again.
Oh my gosh.
Like, how irritating is that?
That's more than irritating.
I know, but it's like also irritating.
Yes, it is.
God, so punchable. But people were trying to disarm him the whole way, and it doesn't seem like he was successful with the attempted extra bullets, so I'm pleased about that. And he was arrested right away, and although the mysterious hoodlum element in Santa Barbara totally defended him, and they were like, well, it made sense what he did. Gray was put on trial, and he pleaded not guilty, even though it had come out since then that everybody around town had seen him all over town, drunk, the day before, telling everybody that John P. Stearns and Theodore Glancey must die before nightfall.
Wow.
But he didn't do it.
Wasn't him.
He didn't do it, and he didn't burn down the newspaper. Oh, it's just so dramatic, and it is the worst. So he was tried 3 times, and one of them remains a Supreme Court precedent.
Oh.
Again, irritating. So first there was a hung jury. Then he was found guilty. But the Supreme Court case that challenged this was because the jury was drunk.
Oh my God.
While deliberating. Like the court delivered like barrels of beer to them and while they were deliberating.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, maybe a lot more people would sign up for jury duty if they were getting free drinks.
Can't now because the Supreme Court says you can't do it. So that got overturned. And
I'm not as surprised now to know that Santa Barbara was such a terrible place full of violence and stuff when this was the recourse for it.
Right, the legal procedures.
the guilty verdict was overturned because of the drunkenness. And the third murder trial, Clarence Gray was found not guilty.
Wow.
And then he disappeared from history, which I am so pleased about because I never want to hear a single other thing about him again.
Are we guessing he just like changed his name?
Oh yeah, probably went back. He's like, I am Patrick McGinnis again.
Yeah,
and like
went and caused trouble somewhere else.
Oh gosh. So on this podcast, we do love it when we can tell you about spooky things, and my story didn't really have that many spooky things. I just shoehorned the spiritualism in. So like haunted places, and there is not a ghost story that we could find associated with the State Street murder of Thomas Glancey, but maybe it would be nice if we made one up.
Yes.
Because Glancey believed that people have spirits and that he would be a ghost. And he wanted that. And he wanted to be contacted. And it seems like maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to wish ghosthood. Is that? I don't know what the word was. Ghostiness. Ghost formation onto him, like onto our fine, upstanding newspaper editor of 150 years ago, who we don't even really remember in this town. But I mean, every topic that we cover, we're like, why isn't there a monument to this?
Why doesn't anybody know about this?
I know. So maybe we can convince you to start believing in a ghost, or maybe a few ghosts. Glancey, his wife, and their children may be haunting the spot where Glancey died, or the spot where he was shot.
I thought you were gonna like invite everybody to do a seance, and I was like, we did not talk about that for the show.
So Liz's thing is that like Ouija boards are not allowed near her.
I know. I'm even Jen's hat is questionable for me.
Yeah. No, but that would have been a great idea.
I have a Ouija board right here, Liz.
I quit.
So if we did a seance, not today, but like, would you come to it?
Yes. I'll be hiding in the next room, peeking behind.
We have a fan.
I know.
I'm so pleased.
I'm more
I will make it
the
happen.
book club speed than the seance club.
Yeah, we also have thought about doing a book club, but that's, I don't know, work. So, like contacting the dead isn't work, I don't know. So I was getting sentimental.
I'm sorry.
Like the ghosts of, him and his
Yeah.
little wife girl, whatever, and their kids. I'm sure it's just a figure of speech. It's not
I
like
hope so.
Mother or what you can't be in a room with. And he died before he could see them, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
Wishing that he could see them before he moved on to what he believed would be just another plane of existence. And if you do want to join us in wishing for a nice, happy, ghostly afterlife for Theodore Glancey and his family, the two locations that he could be at, we're going to wish him there, are Hotel Santa Barbara or the Starbucks. We used to go to that Starbucks all the time.
The Coda-Bucks.
So that one, or the Cruisery. So those were the two places that the hotels were.
Cool.
So that's it. That's my story.
Wow. Thanks, Summers.
Yay.
That was a good one.
So I said I forgot to give away
Oh, a mini 8-ball.
an 8-ball.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you can tell me one of the two stops on the original State Street streetcar route, you can have a mini magic 8-ball. We got someone shout it out.
What is it?
What's one of the original stops?
It was missing something.
Nope.
Why were you so enthusiastic to answer that?
What was it?
The ground.
Oh, yeah.
There was two. Which one? That it was.
Oh, good thinking.
The original line went from Stearns Wharf to the Arlington Hotel.
Thank you for coming.
So the reason we've been giving out mini 8-balls is because we like to finish each of our episodes with a question for our official magic 8-ball.
Which is so old and
It's
very
so old.
viscous
It's
inside.
really- and we're
the
just
little
getting-
triangles don't.
Our eyes are
Yeah.
getting bad and it's really hard to read.
It's the viscousness. Viscosity?
So does anybody have a suggestion for a question? It could relate to one of our stories. Yes.
Is the treasure still
Yes.
under the
Good one.
That's a good
There
one.
we
Oh.
go. Is the treasure still underneath.
I think we can't do both
parking
options.
lot
We have to just ask the
7.
first part. Yeah.
So
Is it still under the parking garage? It says, outlook good.
Oh,
The treasure is still there. Thank you so much for coming to join us. And thank you also to Megan and the downtown team for hosting us from the city of
Yes.
Santa Barbara. We appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
Yay.
We'll see you next time.
Hi, Mom.
Thanks for listening to the Ghoul's Guide to Santa Barbara. Like and subscribe on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Ghoul's Guide to SB.
Our website is ghoulsguidetosb.com. Got a spooky story or know of a haunted or paranormal location in Santa Barbara? Send it to us at ghoulsguidetosb@gmail.com.